at home, tons of fans, stadiums packed. If you don't get up for this game, then what are you even doing? What are you even doing in this job? And today, in credit to the Rossoneri, they did.
Another positive for Milan, you could say, is it gives them something to focus on for the next few weeks, because we were just talking about the weekend with the 9th place in the table. Where are they? Where does this leave them? They've not really got a push for European football, definitely not Champions League football, but this competition now feels like the only silver lining heading into this home stretch.
Yeah, we were talking off camera and we said for all the teams that are still left, and if we consider Bologna in the final, it might mean most to Milan. I mean, Inter for the treble, but Milan for where their season's going to be, because being in 9th place with so many teams ahead of them, getting into a top European position. Obviously, Champions League is going to be impossible at this point, but at least you would be in the Europa League, and for revenue reasons, that could be important for them. So there is a lot at stake. The problem with that, Poppy, is that we've seen this from Milan. They could put in good performance, they could go away and get something, but they're never able to build on top of that. It's always like one step forward, 2 steps backwards, and it's in those smaller games which you end up losing Champions League football. You lose those key spots. So we can't take away too much from this one performance. I think we've learned our lesson, trying to make sweeping statements, but it is positive signs, and I'm happy at the way that the team looked more united. I was scared that they could have been broken after the past couple of matches that they've had. So, yeah, there will be positives in that end.
You think Kyle Walker's got anything to say to João Felix after this game, after he said, pass the ball, we're not Messi on this team? A bit more to smile about.
João Felix got to start on the bench.
Right.
I think that's what we know.
I mean, I think you also have to set a precedent of you have to know how to get into the team and get out of the team. Like Abraham, for example, he's been a good teammate. He's been decent when he's come on. He's had some decent hold-up play moments. So Consensao's like, okay, we don't care that we just signed Jimenez. He's earned this spot. I think that's healthy competition for spots in a team is so important. I used to base my contracts off that all the time, because I used to say, well, listen, these guys are doing so well because I'm pushing them in training every week, and I was fantastic in training, and I'm pushing them to do well. So it was a talking point of mine. But I think it's important to know if you don't perform, like João Felix hasn't performed, you go to the bench. If you do perform, you go to the team, which is why we want to see Orsolini and, to jump a little bit, but why we want to see Orsolini in the national team. He's earned it.
How did that work out for you in those contract negotiations?
Pretty good.
Was it good strategy?
I did okay.
Grella never gives himself a compliment, but he says, I was the best trainer in the world until I got on the pitch.
Ever.
I was great in training.
Well, he blamed.
Well, it was not my fault. It was not my fault that once the game started, everyone they didn't want to pass the ball anymore. They wanted to play in the sky. They put the grass in the sky.
What was that little gesture you do?
Milan, 9th place in Serie A, but in the Derby della Madonnina this season, they are unbeaten against Inter so far, Matteo. That's quite the feat, isn't it, to say what a poor season it's been, and you were impressed with Milan tonight.
Yeah, it was, and we haven't really been able to say that much in 2025, right? Except the Supercoppa, that was a highlight right away of the Conceição era, but today, it felt like they got up for it. They certainly have the skill and the ability to go toe-to-toe with any team in Serie A, right? This is the same team that finished second, and you could argue that they even added a few more pieces to give them more depth. I thought Leao was brilliant in this game. He was unstoppable. Darmian and Bisek could not handle him, so they went even to a triple team where they'd get Frattesi to come back from the midfield and just try to stop him, and even then it was very difficult. José Martinez had to make 2 really good stops, one on Leao, that kick save, that probably would have given them the early advantage. So it was more that I was so impressed with Milan because of how much more competent they looked. And I think that's all you could ask for, right, if you're a Milan fan, is show character. You're playing in the Derby della Madonnina at home, tons of fans, stadiums packed. If you don't get up for this game, then what are you even doing? What are you even doing in this job? And today, in credit to the Rossoneri, they did.
Not to be negative, but it is kind of frustrating, isn't it, to see Milan capable of playing like this against Inter and not be able to see it consistently week in, week out.
It's the problem, because you watch these games and then the one against Real Madrid, and you're like,
they have it.
There's something there, obviously. So when they're up for it, they're really good. And we've known that about some of the guys, right? We've known that about Leao, Theo. We've known that. So they're the ones leading the group. So that's what the team is going to take on. It's going to take on these levels of inconsistency. And that's why they brought Conceição. And like they're saying, let's get these guys on the same page. We know we have the level. We know we have the talent, but Fonseca failed at doing it, Conceição failed at doing it, and it's been a frustration with Milan. You just don't know what you're going to get. I mean, this game was the first time in a while that we've seen them play consistent okay for 90 minutes.
Could Conceição set the tone with consistency in terms of who he starts? Like, did he learn anything from today? Like, okay, maybe if it's possible and everybody's fit and healthy, let's start playing the more consistent lineups, even if that does mean João Felix on the bench.
I mean, it was like a fiasco in Italy when he didn't play Leao. He was asked for it after. He was asked about it after the match. He was asked about it in the press conferences, and he said, Leao's not this superstar player that's scoring 34 games that you're always going to play him. But I think the reality is, you can't find, even if you're frustrated with Leao, even if you think that he's not lived up to the potential, it's hard to find any Milan fan or anyone that watches football and see Milan play and say, all right, Leao, you deserve to be on the bench. Because Milan is simply better when Leao is there. And Conceição has done that at times, and I think he's been too lenient with some of the players that he's brought in January to play them immediately, and it doesn't create that competitiveness that should be needed in a squad like this. So, yeah, it is frustrating, and I think we've all been really hard on Milan this season. The league place that they're in ninth place, speaks to that, but it's also because of the potential that this team has, because of where they should be.
Like, what Milan player can do that? So, like, what if this was in the mid 2000s or the early 90s when they were the Invincibles? Then okay, Leao doesn't play every game, but Leao is Milan's best player, right? He has the talent to be a world-class player. He is inconsistent, which is why he's playing for Milan and he's not starting for teams that are winning Champions League every single season, right?
Sure.
But who else is there? João Felix. João Felix. I see someone who is almost like a raccomandato. Right, someone who has like the nepotism.
Explain what that is. Explain what that is.
It's like nepotism. The agent, right, who wields so much power. The manager, the Portuguese. There's the Portuguese connection with the agent, the manager, and now the player. But João Felix has not done anything to warrant starting a lot of the last few games that he started, right? I think Ricky Sotil probably has more to say, saying, I come in, I provide a little bit of a spark.
Forget about Sotil.
No, but the guy at least looks like he gives a spark.
I was following you.
The spark is going to go back to Flores.
I was following you up until then.
No, I'm not saying Sotil deserves to play over anyone in the starting lineup, right? But the point is that João Felix right now should not be starting games, and he's starting important games, and he hasn't done anything at Milan to deserve this untouchable status, which is quickly fading, by the way.
And I suppose on the other side of that, how much have we seen Leao's stock drop because he's been on the bench and because of all these inconsistencies? I mean, the Pioli era where they won the Scudetto, we were thinking, well, Milan would do so well to keep hold of Rafael Leao and all these teams want him. And now the reality is he worth as much now as he was a couple of seasons ago because we don't see him as much?
He's got a $175 million release clause. That's what Milan have been staying by and saying, all right, if somebody pays the release clause,
that's a really good insight.
You could come and have him. And the reality is, I mean, teams really don't even spend like that anymore. It's not like it was.
Not even the first year of Saudi Arabia could get them to spend $175 million on Leao.
I don't think so. But it is a great point. It's what does Milan do next summer? There's so many question marks about key players. Who do you build upon? Who are the leaders of the team? Who do we keep? Who do we sell? Without being in Champions League football, we got to remember, Milan have to sell. Milan are going to have to let go of somebody to build the rest of the squad. Do they go a younger route? Do they go to De Zerbi? Do they bring back Allegri, the experience that Mike Grella here is begging for Allegri to come back? Paratici has those connections.
In the Italian media with Paratici, De Zerbi's been the name that's been floated on all the most reputable Italian outlets today.
You all like that though, right?
I do like De Zerbi. I feel like De Zerbi left Serie A too soon. He went to Shakhtar Donetsk. Then he goes to Brighton. And then from Brighton, you start hearing whispers of, he's going to go to Liverpool. He might go to City, might be the next Pep Guardiola, given that he studied under Pep Guardiola, spent a whole summer in Germany when Pep was at Bayern Munich. So this is someone who has that philosophy. And you expect him to make that big jump. And I don't think anyone really saw Brighton to Marseille being his career path, which it felt like his trajectory was upwards. But it's almost kind of stalled now. So I'd be curious that Zerbi also has the Milan link. He was a former Milan youth player.
He's Milan. He is Milan. I think he understands the history of this club. What Sacchi built with Milan was a beautiful attacking style of football. That's why last year I wanted them, if they were going to move away from Pioli, I said, go for De Zerbi. Why not? It's an interesting, it is a bet. It's a risk. Well, we could all admit that we're not saying De Zerbi.
It's not as much of a risk as Fonseca.
No, it's not. But it's not as much of a guarantee as like an Antonio Conte, for example, just because Paratici has the connections with
Look at the players
Conte
that got better at Brighton, how much they sold off those players, and he had to deal with a team that was selling all their best players. Like what he did at Brighton in the Premier League, especially the first year, was incredible. The way that team played, outpossessed Manchester City. This guy has incredible ideals. He's a student of the game.
Does he excite you? Would that excite you to watch Milan again?
Excites me more than anyone. I mean, realistically, Milan's not going to get Pep Guardiola, right? They're not going to get
Jurgen Klopp.
They're not going to get him. Let's be honest. They're not going to pay for what he's worth. De Zerbi's maybe the most interesting. He's much more interesting to me and exciting than Max Allegri, where you already know what you're going to get.
You're very quiet.
Max Allegri?
I think he's much more exciting. I like him as well. I like De Zerbi. I think he's fantastic.
But if you're a Milan fan, which would you want?
If you're a Milan fan, you cannot afford to be not in the top 4 again. You can't afford to finish 9. So De Zerbi, you're going to play better football for sure. But Allegri is probably more of a guaranteed thing, a little bit more similar to Conte in terms of he understands the league, he understands the club, and he understands how to get top 4 in this league.
If you were Paratici, who would you go for?
For me personally, at this point, I would go for De Zerbi, just because I think he'll bring an exciting brand of football, and I think they have a lot of good tools. Now, speaking about the tools, though, I think that the back line is not as good as people think, and they need to. Or if people think that,
nobody. I think you're the only one that liked their back line.
I think we've said, and a lot of people said, oh, they have good pieces, I think more specifically, they have good attacking pieces and decent pieces in the midfield. But when you look at their back line, there's a big drop off there, right? Theo Hernandez, we question his defensive ability. He's been at fault for a lot of these goals. Manjan's been a little bit all over the place. I thought he had a fantastic game today. But Milik Chow, Gabbia, Pavlovic,
there's no one
Walker's 35, 36 years old at this point. So if they're going to reinvest, they definitely need someone at the in the defensive position.
You named 4 guys, and there's also Tomori. No one has been able from those center backs to differentiate themselves from the rest. I think Tomori should still be a starter.
Tomori is one of the best.
I know Tomori's made some mistakes. He hasn't lived up to that first Scudetto year where he partnered with Pierre Kalulu. But come on. I mean, given some of the defensive performances, you're telling me Tomori can't get a minute? It's very strange, especially since he was starting every game in the first few under Conceição. It seemed like Tomori was going to be the guy once again.
I think Milan made a big mistake last summer in not fixing the defense. I remember this stat like the back of my hand. 10 teams had a better defensive record than Milan last year. And it was identified that, we're just going to attack and we're going to press more and we're going to suffocate teams.
They tried. They got Pavlovic.
Okay, but come on. Pavlovic does not solve.
He's a 10
teams conceding fewer goals than you. That's a problem, and you need to invest properly there. Like Napoli. Napoli went for Buongiorno. They need a defender. Boom. They got the best defender in Serie A the previous season. Milan need to do that.